What's going on, traders, and welcome to this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. In the Weekly Watchlist, I do a technical analysis and give you some of my thoughts on the tickers here. On the left, we have the broad market comprised of SPY, the Qs, and IWM. After that, we look at some companies. We have Apple, Netflix, Tesla, Alibaba, Facebook, NVDA, ROKU, Microsoft, AMD, McDonald's, and Amazon. If you'd like to see me add anything to the list, let me know down below in the comments section, and I can certainly add it to next week's video. With that, let's hop into the broad market. Alrighty, so looking at the broad market, we're going to be starting on the monthly chart this time, just because we did close out the month of May in this last trading week. So looking at the monthly chart, you can see we have this big red bar that has formed. It's a bearish engulfer of the prior green candle, and it's approaching the low of this hammer candle, or hanging man, if you wanted to call it that, that we have here. So some things to note here. Obviously, a lot of selling has come in. The force behind it isn't as strong as it has been in the past if you look at the volume bars. If we look at the volume bars, it's still not even as much as we saw in some of these initial dumps back at the beginning of 2018. So volume isn't quite all the way there on this monthly bar. Volume could always pick up in the red direction. However, just note that it is on lighter volume than some of these dumps in the past. We are still well above our monthly 50, and I'd say we're still more than halfway above our move from late 2018 and early 2019. So you see the 50% retracement level is still down here at 263, so quite a ways off that. So I would say we're still experiencing just a bit of a pullback after such a massive run from the beginning of the year. And we'll look at the other QQQ and IWM monthly while we're here. So again, this one is QQQ, very similar. Again, this one in terms of getting to that 50% mark is a little bit closer. Right now it's sitting at the 38.2, so that could be a sign that we do see some sort of pause here in the downwards momentum. Again, look at the volume here, not nearly as much as here or here or here. So we could see this increase as the new month, it's going to be obviously early and not all the volume fleshed out, but if this volume does pick up and start to overtake some of this mid-month and it's all red volume, then we would maybe want to consider that the bears are starting to, come in and push prices lower. IWM, on the other hand, never even quite got up to its high. So right now, you could look at this in a few ways. If we look at a fib from the high to the low of this move here, you can see that we retraced pretty much 61.8 to that key fib there and then have had a turnaround. So you could say, this is nothing but a pullback, target the other side. So we could be looking at 125 here on IWM. Or conversely, if you look at the move in the upwards direction from here to here, you can see how much closer than the other two indexes are than that this one is to the 50% retracement mark. So that could act as a magnet there right around 143 and pull the prices of IWM down to that level. So just some larger time scales to keep in mind, larger trends to keep in mind. Obviously, from here to here, the trend has been up. Our 50 SMA and 200 SMA are obviously pointing up, so we are still in an overall uptrend, I would say. But these are just things that you might want to consider. So let's tone it back down, get into the weeklies and dailies. Alrighty, so getting back into our SPY weekly chart, you can see that we've poked down through our 50 SMA, which is a sign that we could see a snapback as a reaction come this upcoming week. Again, this downtrend is still very much intact. We haven't had any sorts of violations of that line. We can probably see that clear on the daily, but we are through the weekly 50. You can see how that reacts as it has in the past. We get down into it, big snapback. Again, it busted right through this time, but that was after the second attempt. So we could be looking for a snapback on the first breach of that weekly 50 and then a move lower. Again, the monthlies do look like they want to move lower. Lots of selling and red volume starting to come in, but could pick up throughout the next upcoming month here in June. We'll move down to the daily. You can also see here that we breached the daily 200, which is a very key level. Obviously, here's our downtrend, still very much intact. We could look for a move to the upside. Friday, we did close really weak at the bell. We closed on the low of the day just about. So I would say our next support point could come into play down here where we see a nice bounce has been produced right around 272.41. Anything lower than that, I would say our next one is right around 270, or actually this level looks a little bit better than 270. Somewhere in here, so just below 270, right around 267.59, right about somewhere from these lows. It also sort of coincides with the resistance here based on this candle. So that is on the downside. On the upside, look for a resistance point to be held here at the 200 SMA now that we are below it. And obviously, as we continue, if we do continue in the upwards direction on any sort of pullback from this downtrend, look for this trend line to come into play also. QQQ daily also again closing weak on Friday, so below the 200 now, although not as much as SPY. We do have a support point coming into play right around 173 rather. So keep that in mind. If we see a flush out of the gates on Monday morning, there might be some buyers sitting here waiting to prop the prices back up. Seeing that all this blood, there could be a good buying opportunity. If that one doesn't really hold, I would again look for something a little bit lower than that. This one comes into play right around 169 based on that low, and our next one below that from this low is right around 166.58. So keep those levels in mind on the downside. Again, everything's mapped out on the upside, including this resistance trend line. So IWM, although the other two indexes that we watched did have a better close than SPY and the Qs. So you can see obviously we closed off the highs, or off the lows rather, and seeing some semblance of support off of this 145 whole dollar mark. People looked like they stepped up, bought that on the afternoon rally, I guess you would call it. And now we're sort of at an indecisive point. So based on what the market does, you're going to have to play this one by ear. We have an indecision candle here, but lots of downtrend, lots of red volume. I would say the bears are favored to push prices lower, get below this support. Once that cracks, we're looking at 141.32. If we do generate any sort of bounce off this indecision here, we're looking at 148, possibly 150 psychological resistance on the upside if it wants to get up that high. But again, the way the market is poised, I wouldn't put my bets going in the upwards direction quite yet. Alrighty, so getting into our companies right now, we're looking at Apple first. Because the whole market is sort of in a downtrend at the moment, all of our companies are sort of going to be following the market movement. So a lot of things we have to talk about are key support levels. So on Apple, you can see we've breached our support here at 175, closing below it. So we would target our next one below at 169. I would even say 170, the whole dollar there. The nice round number based on some of the support that we saw down here. Look for a little intraday bounce, but don't expect it to hold up necessarily overnight per se, because of the downtrend and the market is moving down with the downtrend. Obviously, we're not placing a lot of weight on our supports here, as anything can sort of happen overnight. Gaps down, and now we're below that support. We're targeting our next one below. So just keep that in mind as we talk about our companies today. We're looking at supports for intraday bounces to happen, but not necessarily form any sort of full reversal off of. We're looking for just intraday bounces. Alrighty, so Netflix, instead of looking for a bounce here, we're looking for a flush. You can see it's precariously being propped up by this support line here, but based on the candle on Friday, I'd say a flush down to our 200-day SMA is more than likely. If we see a break of this key level here at 342.20 just about, we're looking for a same-day flush down to the 200, which is sitting right around 336.6. I just call it 336.50. If we see that flush, then look for some consolidation throughout the next day, but expect to move lower if we give up that 200 SMA down here to our next support. Again, looking for only short intraday bounces, not expecting a whole reversal to come out of all these support points. Tesla's way down here in no man's land. Again, following the markets and looking at how it's being precariously propped up by this level here at 185.69. I would say we're looking again for a flush downwards again. If we look at the monthly, so this is a zoomed out view here of the monthly on Tesla. You can see we're approaching a very key support here. You can see we got bounce 1, 2, dipped way below it, but we have our support drawn in down there at 141. Bounce 2, 3, 4. We're approaching this level now, so I would imagine that there should be some sort of pause here. However, based on the monthly bar, it looks like we could slice right through it. I would say if we break this level and get below it, be careful shorting further on how overextended this is. Again, Tesla sort of picking up in our bearish volume here, a lot of short sellers stepping in. However, just keep in mind that we are getting a bit overextended on the downside. If we come down into our next support down here at 141, I would say 150, the nice round number there, might even provide some support before we get there. Look for some bounces to start happening on Tesla. BABA has been getting hammered as well. Pretty much a move straight down here with quite a lot of range to it. You can see we're almost up at 200, giving away almost $50 worth, coming back down to 149. I'd say if we give up this support zone that we're sort of sitting in, you can see we sort of have some solid support in this level. If we give that up, we're looking at a move lower. Our next target on the downside is 130, putting us right back down into this double bottom zone. So that is on the downside. On the upside, if we do see some support come in here, we're looking to target the 200 SMA, and anything after that, 170, definitely going to act as strong resistance in this downtrending market. Alrighty, Facebook just gave up the daily 50 SMA, which has been a key one. I would expect more blood to come in. We're looking for an intraday bounce to happen at 171 if it wants to get down there. Anything lower than that is the 200 and our 158 level on the upside. We're looking at sort of this resistance trend line that we can draw in, actually. We have something that's sort of forming like this. You can see prices want to stay below it. If we see a retest of that level, look for it to get battered down again if the market is red that day. Alrighty, NVDA is also a red one. We've just been talking about all red. Again, we're coming into a pretty key support down here where we generated a nice move from. So I would expect some sort of intraday bounce at least at that level around 131.40. After that, we're looking at 125, just about where this bottom is here. And if we get lower than that, it's not going to be too good. We don't have very much recent chart history around that level. So if we do give that up, look for a lot more red to come into play. At that point, you're playing intraday bounces and patterns. On the upside, we're looking at 145 just about on any sort of retest of this support zone here. And again, with the downward trending market, be careful on any sort of upward move. ROKU has shown excellent strength compared to the market, and this is one that we're going to talk about some upside potential to. It never came quite all the way to $100. You can see we're sort of consolidating after a nice move up, consolidation, nice move up, consolidation. Right now, what we want to see is ROKU maintain above this high here, right around 86.60. As long as we can maintain above that level and sort of consolidate, digest this move, the market can digest it, I would say we could poke up and attempt 100 after that. Microsoft sort of following the market. However, we are seeing it being propped up by the 50 SMA on the daily. If we give that up on Monday, I would expect a flush down to this level around 120. If we see any sort of bounce come out of this, we're looking for a move back in the upwards direction. I'd say somewhere right around 126 would be a good target on the upside for this upcoming week. Anything after that, our next level would be up around here, around 128. AMD sort of sideways again, really boring. Had some nice range here, about $2.61. But you can see it's coming back down to test its support trend line. If this gives, we're looking at a move down here to 25, I'd say. 25 is most likely, with a brief pause right around 26, the whole dollar mark based on some of these lows here. Anything on the upside, we're looking at resistance mapped out for us right around 29, and anything after that, 30. McDonald's has a nice pattern forming here. You can see we've consolidated after this nice move up, saw a little pullback, buyers stepped back in, and now we're attempting to re-break into our highs. So $200 is a very key psychological level. Obviously, Friday's candle shows that. You can see how bearish of a reaction is off of that level. But if we can come up and attempt it again, and then clear the high, actually, at 201 rather, I'd say we could go to 205 on McDonald's. Anything on the downside, we're looking at the 50 SMA to act as support. This level in here right around 195, and then anything lower than that is 193 and 190 after that. Amazon sort of following the market, heading in the downward direction. We're looking at a bounce to be generated somewhere in this area based on the $200 mark and some of our support down here. That's right around 1750, I'd say. 1750 would be a key area on the chart. If we can get sort of an intraday bounce there, that would be nice. But again, not placing too much strength into it and looking for support to, again, come into play a little bit lower, right around 1710, I'd call it, based on some of these highs in here. Anything after that sends Amazon quite a ways down, back through some of our key psychological levels. So keep those in mind if we do breach any of this. Again, that's quite a move for the week. Anything on the upside, looking at resistance come into play at 1825, 1875, and 1900 on the way up. Alrighty, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. If you made it this far, I'd like to thank you. Obviously, you have an interest in the stock market and trading in general. I'd encourage you to head on over to the channel, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment if you enjoyed, leave the video a thumbs up as well. And with that, I wish you a green trading week.